Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Time and time again, the author of Judges, whomever that might be, reminds the reader that the events that occur in the book of Judges, particularly the bad things that happen in the book of Judges, happened in a time when there was no king. We saw this in chapter 18 in verse 1 where it says, "In those days there was no king of Israel." It goes on to talk about the Danites and how they went seeking an inheritance. And then we see in chapter 19, that horrible chapter where we see the Levites' concubine degraded. It says at the beginning of that chapter in verse 1, "Now it came about in those days when there was no king in Israel." And then even the book of Judges ends in chapter 21 in verse 25 with this statement, with another statement added to it. It says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." And so, as mentioned, time and time again, the author of Judges is reminding the reader that there were no kings. There was no king during the time all these events were happening. And even that led to people doing whatever was right in their own eyes. And so, as we reflect on this statement, we have to say that perhaps the same thing is true with us as well. When we go through those seasons of life where there is no king, at least those seasons of life perhaps where the kingship and the lordship of Christ isn't in the forefront of our minds, we're not really walking with the awareness of Christ's authority over our lives. There's times when we kind of get distracted and misled by the allurements of the world, by various circumstances and situations we find ourselves in. And perhaps we just cease really making a real effort to get into the Word, to pray to the Lord, to worship the Lord. And before we know it, the kingship of Christ becomes a faint memory in our minds. And that's when things get dangerous. Whenever we no longer really live cognizant of the lordship and the kingship of Christ in our lives, that's when we begin to do what is right in our own eyes. We stop seeking the Lord in prayer before engaging in particular activities. We no longer consider the Lord perhaps when making decisions or when temptations come. Perhaps we don't even think about the Lord until we fall into sin and we give in to temptation, and then perhaps we remember him and want to turn back. But by then we've already fallen, and we just become very lackadaisical in the spiritual life. And so this text should remind us that if we don't have Christ as King of our heart, if we don't allow him to sit on the throne of our soul and our heart, then we begin to go after our own devices, and it can become a dangerous thing. And if nothing else, even if nothing seemingly disastrous happens, if nothing else, we're just not really accomplishing much. We're not moving forward in the spiritual life. We're not glorifying Christ in our lives and in our actions. And it can just lead, if nothing else, to really a life of vanity and emptiness. So let's take these words seriously and say, you know what, today there's going to be a king in my heart. Today there's going to be a king in my mind and in my soul and in my body. I'm going to submit myself to Christ. He will now have the full authority in my life. He will become king once again, and I'll align my life to him and begin to go in the direction that he leads me. And hopefully, again, today's reading will help us to do that. So here's some things we can reflect on and think about as we do our readings today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.